First, take a look at this picture. In this video, I'm going to talk about where the Hashiras are looking, what they mean, and the patterns behind them. So first, I'm going to explain why I used this picture for today's analysis. It's a pretty cool story, so check it out. When Obanai pins Tanjiro down, Kocho-san says if Tanjiro uses his breathing technique now, his veins will burst. Then Tengen-san says that'd be so cool. He seems all excited and stuff. When I first saw this scene, I just thought he was some kind of weirdo, but after watching the Yukaku arc, I started looking at him in a whole different perspective. He sounds all excited and interested in Tanjiro, but while he's saying all this, he doesn't take his eyes off of Nezuko the demon, not even for a second. I thought that was incredibly cool. He was doing his job. Sometimes he comes off as a strange person, but he takes his job very seriously. Now, going back to the first image, Himejima-san is talking and the other Hashiras, they're all looking at him, but not Nezuko. But Tengen-san, he doesn't take his eyes off of her. He's a soldier. He's loyal to the mission. He knows what needs to be done at any given point. Also, you probably noticed this too, but the same goes for Rengoku-san. He's staring at Nezuko as well. He's most likely looking out for everyone, making sure she doesn't hurt anyone, but a sibling turning into a demon? I think he could relate to that. Maybe seeing her reminded him of Senjuro, his little brother. Maybe he was thinking, what would I do if something like this happened to me and my family? I'm sure you've all got your opinions about this, but personally, I think his father Shinjuro would do anything to protect Senjuro. And let's not forget, Shinjuro once abandoned his mission as a Hashira. And by doing so, he tried to convince his family to leave the Demon Slayer Corps. Personally, I think he put his family before the mission. That's what makes him so human, and that's what I love about him. Anyways, let's go back to the Hashira meeting. So a sibling turns into a demon and, worst case scenario, you have to take them out yourself, and Rengoku-san could relate to that, and same with Tengen-san. His situation was a bit different, but he had to get rid of his own siblings too. For Rengoku-san and Tengen-san, Nezuko and the situation she was in, they could really relate to it. And Giyu, he's always looking straight forward. In the last video, when I talked about the time when they found out Tanjiro had met Muzan, the others were shocked, but he didn't blink or move his eyes once. We saw this in the Gaiden, keep calm. That was Urokodaki-san's teaching, and I think that's why he was so calm. Now let's look at Kocho-san. She's looking at Tanjiro instead of Gyomei. Why? Well, in the next clip, her older sister Kanae, she dreams of a world where humans and demons coexist. And Nezuko, she might be the one to make this a reality. With her knowledge, maybe she can really change things for the better. So she couldn't let anything happen to Tanjiro or Nezuko. In a way, I think she was worried about Tanjiro. Maybe she simply wanted to help him out. Maybe she wasn't thinking about all that, but who knows? Now look at Kanroji-san. She's looking at Gyomei. She likes giving out compliments, so makes sense. And Muichiro, his eyes are all over the place, probably because he knows he's gonna forget about everything anyways, or maybe he's just not interested. Now let's look at Gyomei. He's talking about Tanjiro here, and just like Tengen-san, he's keeping his eyes on Nezuko. He's looking straight at her. Some of you might be saying he's always like that, but when Kocho-san volunteers to take Tanjiro with her, he looks at her, as you can see here. So even though he's worried about him, his first priority is keeping an eye out on the demon. So to summarize, this was kinda interesting. The Hashiras with more experience, they were all looking at Nezuko. On the other hand, inexperienced Hashiras like Muichiro and Kanroji-san, they took their eyes off of her. Now, this is just speculation, but the more experience you have, the more you know that demons can't be trusted and that you can never let your guard down, not even for a second. It was a short clip with Guillaume-san saying just a few words, but it gave me a lot to think about. It's these little details that make Demon Slayer such a good series. Normally, you'd think that all the characters would look at the person speaking, but that wasn't the case here. Each character has a story, and that's what makes these characters come to life. Okay, let's move on to some of the other interesting stuff I discovered. Starting from the beginning, first, the title screen. The background? I think it's a kimono for the water-breathing technique, but the yellow circle in the middle, what is that thing? This is just my imagination talking, but maybe it represents Nezuko's feeling at the Hashira meeting. The background, the water-breathing technique, is there to protect her. In other words, a clue from Urokodaki-san. And Tanjiro's kindness. And the yellow circle? Personally, I thought it was the moon. Muzan sometimes go by Tsukihiko, Tsuki means moon in Japanese, and the moon comes out at night. And at night, the demons come to life. As we saw in this episode, Nezuko has both human and demon sides living inside her. Day and night, the blue sky and the moon, maybe that's what this is symbolizing. But there is one thing that doesn't add up. The title says Hashira Meeting, and my theory is that the background represents Nezuko's emotions. But Nezuko started having mixed feelings about this before the meeting. The interaction between Nezuko and Sanemi, that happened before the Hashira meeting. So maybe I'm wrong about all this, but who knows? Anyways, like I said before, it's these little things that make this such a great series. I mean, I came up with all these ideas just by looking at the title screen. Now moving on to this scene. When Nezuko starts getting mixed feelings, here everything is shown from her perspective. It was a great scene, let's go over it once again. First, her mother. We didn't hear her voice, but looking at her lips, I think she was saying Nezuko. Then we see Shigeru playing. He's playing with Nezuko's clothes. And Rokuta? He's being cute as always. Maybe this was a childhood memory of her. Or maybe none of this actually happened and it was just my imagination running wild. Either way, it was a beautiful clip. And looking back at the scene, honestly, I think they could have cut the flashback clip. It wasn't that vital to the storyline as a whole. They could have just made Nezuko turn the other way. But they didn't do that. I think they added this part to show us how hard she was fighting on the inside, to show us how strong she was, and how strong she felt about her family. That's why she was able to stop herself from eating humans. And so Nezuko manages to stop herself. After that, she gets approved by the Demon Slayer Corps, but then Sanemi's blood, it's like the final selection. The truth about Nezuko was gonna come out at some point, so I'm glad she was able to prove herself in front of Oyakata-sama and the other Hashiras. And do you remember what Oyakata-sama said to Tanjiro and the others? It wasn't just about the bond between Tanjiro and Nezuko he was concerned about. He wanted them to show that they could be useful. He was very straightforward about this, and I really liked that. He was basically saying, show me how you can be useful to us, and that's much easier than proving your bond with someone. If I'm gonna work for someone, I wanna work for someone like him. And Tanjiro replies, I'll take out Muzan no matter what it takes. Then Oyakata-sama replies, well, I don't think you can do that just yet, so let's start with the 12 Kizuki. This was a funny scene and I laughed too, but when I looked at Rengoku-san, he was the only one who wasn't laughing. I'm not trying to put the other Hashiras down or anything, but Rengoku-san, he believes in Tanjiro and the others. He has faith in the younger generation. That's why he didn't find this to be funny. I'm sure everyone laughed at this scene, but not Rengoku-san. He's such an amazing character, but I think it's completely normal to laugh here. It's like a new employee working at McDonald's saying, "I'm gonna take down Burger King no matter what it takes." Then the boss says, "Well, that's nice and all, but let's start by learning how to make a burger first." Oh, and just to be clear, I love both McDonald's and Burger King. I got nothing against Burger King. Anyways, after that, Oyakata-sama says to Sanemi and Obanai, "Don't be too mean." He sounded like a kindergarten teacher talking to the kids, and it was kind of funny. The more time they spend fighting demons, the more they forget about their human side. But Oyakata-sama, maybe he's there to remind them of their roots, that they're human. Then we see Tanjiro and Nezuko exiting, but Tanjiro comes back asking Sanemi to let him headbutt him. Then Muichiro throws a rock and says, "You can't interrupt Oyakata-sama." He said this out of respect for Oyakata-sama, but I think there was another meaning behind this. As we saw earlier, his memory is limited and he's gonna end up forgetting everything anyways, so he lives in the moment. So he doesn't like it when others waste his time. That's the impression I got. Can't wait to see him in action at the Swordsmith Village. Then Tanjiro and Nezuko are off to the Butterfly Mansion. It was pretty funny when the Kakushi told Tanjiro to apologize. Anyways, Tanjiro meets Kanao for the third time. He first met her after the final selection and the second time he saw her at the battle in Mount Natagumo. Then he ran into her once again at the Butterfly Mansion, and here it looks like he met her for the first time. He's met her twice before, but in both situations things were pretty tense, so I guess it was his first time seeing her under normal conditions like this. And when he left, he looked back at her several times, and it was kinda bittersweet. But then Zenitsu shows up and ruins the mood. He was crying because he couldn't take his meds. By the way, if you look at the label, it says drink 5 times a day before and after meals. If you eat 3 meals a day, that'll be 6 times. And if you only eat twice a day, that's 4 times. Either way, how do you get the number 5? I took some time to think about this, and first, I think he has 4 meals a day. He was smaller now, so he had to divide up his meals in smaller portions. And the medication he takes after breakfast, that's also the meds he's supposed to take before lunch. If you look at it like this, I guess the number 5 makes sense. Otherwise, the number 5 makes no sense. This was the only logical explanation I could think of. Now, moving on to Inosuke. He's so great, he looks like an old man here. Tanjiro was worried about him, but he just says, "No worries. Sorry, I'm so weak." When I first saw this scene, I laughed pretty hard. I really like the sense of humor in this show. Moving on to the scene where Tanjiro talks to Nezuko, it was an emotional scene. Tanjiro says, "If you stay like this, I'll grow up to be an old man and die. I don't want things to end like that." So he really wants to turn her back to a human. And here we see that he's the complete opposite of Muzan. The stronger the bond, the harder it is to lose someone. It's not about how long you live, it's about who you live with. On the contrary, Muzan has no emotional attachment to anyone, so maybe that's why he can live for so many years without feeling lonely. Now, the scene from the Hashira meeting. Oyakata-sama says to them, "You are the strongest group in the history of our family." Kagaya Ubuyashiki is the 97th leader of the Ubuyashiki family, and that must be a big shoe to fill. It's like being an anchor in a relay race. And if your team is falling behind, and this race, It's been going on for generations, and it may soon be coming to an end. And, as we saw in the preview of the next episode, Muzan finally showed himself, so this is an opportunity of a millennium. Rengoku-san and Tengen-san are both very excited about this, but Rengoku-san ends up losing his life in combat, and Tengen-san suffers severe injuries and is forced to retire. Regardless, the battle continues, and the baton has been passed down to Tanjiro and the others from Kyojiro Rengoku and Tengen Uzui. I'm sure he'll make them proud. That's it for today. See you in the next video. That's all for now. For more Demon Slayer theories, please like and subscribe for more videos. See you soon.